Anyone else obsessed with the Muses from Disney's Hercules? Well, what if I told you that they were real? Well, kinda. They were real in the mythological sense. Each muse has their own name, their own history, and their own story. And today, we dive into our favorite two muses, and ourselves, of course, on the first episode of the Melanin Muses Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Melanin Muses Podcast.
I'm Callie, a clinical counselor, mental health advocate, and lover of stories and all things nerdy.
And I'm Cleo, a creative, a storyteller, and all-around art enthusiast. And together, we're diving into the magic of creativity, culture, and psychology, all while keeping it fun and relatable.
So let's kick this off by talking about why we even chose the name Melanin Muses. If you're anything like us, you were obsessed with Disney's Hercules, right? I mean, the Muses, they stole the show.
They were bold, they were funny, they were full of personality, like, hello. And most importantly, they looked like us. And honestly, as two Black women who love storytelling, art, and psychology, like, we knew we just had to pay tribute. Let me give it to you straight. We gonna tell a little story here. We gonna sit down, like, if you need your blanket, you need your tea, whatever you need, prepare yourself, because we gonna have a story time here, okay? So we gonna take it back to ancient Greece for a second. The OG Muses, for y'all who don't know, the original Muses, they weren't just about music. They were the goddesses of art, literature, history, and inspiration, mind blown. And basically, they were the ultimate creative squad.
So according to mythology, the Muses were the daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, the goddess of memory. So creativity, knowledge, and storytelling, it's all connected to history and legacy.
And even better, there was not just one, there was not just two, there were 9. We want to shine a little extra light on 2 of them, our personal favorites, Clio and Calliope. So, Cleo, my homegirl, the muse I am named after. She good. She's the Muse of History, and she was the personification of memory. From the legendary tales of heroes to the rise and fall of empires. Her role was so crucial that she was often called the proclaimer of history. And this ensured that the deeds of the gods and mortals alike were remembered for all time. And she helped create a bridge between the past and the present, and making sure nothing important was lost to time. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's pretty cool. Like,
that's freaking amazing. I love that.
But how do we see her? How do we actually see her in paintings and lore and all of that? Well, she's often depicted with a scroll or a book in hand. I love my books, so I'm down with it. That's why I love me some Cleo. And like those books and scrolls symbolize her role as the record keeper of history. Because back then, they weren't so lucky. They didn't have the computers that we had, so they had to do everything by hand. And maybe like a chisel at some point, because they didn't have like a chisel, right?
Word of mouth something.
Yeah, word of mouth something. They had something. And then, Cleo was also known for her association with great historical epics, whether it was the Trojan War or the accounts of the famous Greek heroes like Hercules or Perseus, or the founding cities of Thebes. Like, the poet Hesiod even invoked her, like when telling the story of the gods in Theogony, acknowledging her role in preserving divine history. In fact, my friends, many historians in the ancient world, like Herodotus and mother frickin'
Thucydides,
whatever the heck his name is. Like they were also told that they were inspired by Cleo. Okay, that's all you need to know. Cleo inspired them. And as they aim to document and understand the causes and effects of historical events. So Cleo, our homegirl, she did a lot of really cool stuff, and she inspired many people, and that's why we have a lot of the historical document stuff, like according to legend. So Cleo was a badass, and we love her. So as a creative person, I actually really connect to Cleo, not only because she's a baddie, but in many ways, like that's also what I'm doing through my art and writing. In every doodle, in every story, I feel like I'm helping preserve the past, even if I'm only a small part of it. And maybe just maybe, like, my own moments will become part of someone else's history too. So that's the connection to Cleo. But now that we talked about my homegirl, what about Callie, Calliope? Tell us more, darling.
That's a good question. So first off, I love that. I love your connection. And speaking of storytelling, let me tell you a little bit about my relationship with Calliope, who is the Muse of Epic Poetry.
Ooh.
So Calliope is all about the big, bold, and legendary stories, the ones that inspire people to rise above challenges and to create something monumental. In Greek mythology, Calliope is often described as the oldest and the wisest of the Muses. Big sister energy for the win.
That sounds about right.
She's the one who gave Homer the inspiration for the Iliad and the Odyssey, two of the most well-known epics in Western literature. So these works not only shaped literature, but they also define the values and belief systems of the ancient Greeks. So when we think about Calliope, Calliope was said to be the one who helped to craft the tales of heroes like Achilles, Odysseus, and Hector, the characters who faced incredible odds and achieved feats of greatness. But Calliope's influence goes beyond just epic poetry. She's known as the muse of all things heroic and grand. The Aeneid, the epic poem by Virgil, was another great work inspired by Calliope. She typically depicts, we talk about how we see Calliope. How do we depict her? We have the Disney's Hercules version, where she's got like the big curly hair and looks pretty cool. But historically, she's depicted as holding a writing scroll or tablet, as her role was to guide the poets and the bards in crafting more legendary feats. Full of high stakes and lasting impacts, her job basically was to record those things and help with the record keeping of those things, very similarly to Cleo, but the difference is it was more the big bad stories that have lessons and growth opportunities that were nicely meshed within them. So Calliope's power wasn't just limited to inspiring stories. She was also seen as a symbol of eloquence and profound power of language, as her voice could move gods and mortals alike. Funny enough, we have a running joke in here that at some point I could be hired to do ASMR. So if we talk about the movement of voice and language, I think that is where I shine the best. But also, as a clinical counselor, my job is all about helping people rewrite their stories, guiding them through some of life's hardest chapters and empowering them to create a better, stronger future. In a way, it's like I'm channeling Calliope's energy because she's all about those big, bold, legendary tales, just like the ones we're living every day. Think of Odysseus making his way home from the Trojan War, or Achilles grappling with fate and glory. These stories were full of courage and transformation and a sense of dignity and destiny. And in the work I do, I get to help people navigate their own heroic journeys, where they find their strength, overcome their obstacles, and emerge victorious. So whether I'm supporting someone through therapy or just being a listener, I draw from the same sense of transformation that Calliope inspires. She's the muse of epic journeys. And that's exactly what I'm here to help people with. Finding their strength, overcoming challenges, and writing their own heroic tales. It's about finding power in your story. And trust me, everyone has a story worth telling.
Girl, you know you're a walking legendary story already, so let's be real. Let's be real about that.
Stop. But seriously, both Cleo and Callie represent something we deeply believe in. History and storytelling are powerful. They shape us, they inspire us, and they help us heal. Just like how Cleo makes sure that the important moments of history aren't forgotten, Calliope makes sure that these epic personal journeys, the ones full of growth, challenges, and victory, are remembered, celebrated, and shared.
Yes, my darlings. Exactly as Callie said with her miraculous Also, resume going on there. Well, dang. Okay, fine. No, we celebrate people over here. Love you. But y'all, whether it's the grand epics of the past or the quiet personal stories that we live every day, these muses can remind us that our stories matter. You matter. We matter. Our stories matter. Our voices matter. And the ancient Greeks understood that. Stories, whether about the gods, the heroes, or ordinary people, like they have the power to connect us. They have the power to inspire us and to help us understand not only other people, but understand ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because, that's a journey in of itself. Trying to understand ourselves and who are we at our core instead of what society tries to mold us into. So that's something that we can learn. And, that's what Cleo and Calliope are all about. The history, the transformation, the power of storytelling, all of that. And these muses didn't just inspire poetry. They helped us create the very foundation of how we understand our world through stories. Because, sometimes people can say things to us, and it's almost like you hear it repeatedly and you just don't grasp it. You don't understand it. It doesn't resonate. It doesn't sink in. I've definitely had those moments where I've talked to people and they tried to share like advice or something special and like, hey, you should probably do this or think about this. And it just didn't resonate. It didn't really stick or hit home. But the moment like I listened to a particular song or I read a book series and it talked about the same concept, all of a sudden it actually resonated a lot deeper. And I'm like, oh, is that what they meant? Because hindsight's 20/20 sometimes. So understanding stories or understanding ourselves through stories is a real thing. And then sometimes we need other mediums to help us through that and help us understand that. And that's why we're here, y'all. That's why we're here to talk about this stuff.
That's actually a really great segue because that's what brings us the biggest reason why we started this podcast. It's creativity isn't just about art. It's about expression and identity and growth. It's how we tell our stories, how we process what's happening in our lives, and how we connect with the world around us. Creativity can be as simple as doodling in a notebook or a complex emotional writing, like a novel or an epic. It's all about taking what's inside of you and giving it form.
Oh, what are these emotions that I'm feeling?
Pluck that lie, girl.
Pluck that lie. But it's a way of translating emotions into something actually tangible that we otherwise would have known.
We want to have these conversations. We want to highlight these connections and create a space where nerds, creatives, and deep thinkers can thrive. This is a podcast for people who feel deeply, who see art in everything, and who want a space to celebrate both the fun and the profound aspects of creativity. Whether you're an artist, a writer, a musician, or just someone who loves stories, we're here to geek out with you, unpack the layers of creative expression, and remind you that your voice, your story matters. We'll be diving into anime psychology, like why do we all feel an emotional bond to fictional characters so intensely? Like, why does a well-written character feel like a real person? And why do we sometimes grieve them like we would a friend? We'll also break down the psychology of villains. What makes a truly compelling antagonist? Why we sometimes root for them? And how their stories reflect real-life struggles.
So expect laughs, deep conversations, and maybe even a few emotional moments. Maybe. Because I'm a crybaby, I'm not gonna lie.
So now, before we go, we want to hear from you. Who or what is your muse? What creative passions or inspirations keep you going? And is it a favorite artist, a show that changed your life, or maybe a character that you deeply relate to? Creativity shows up in so many ways, and we'd love to hear what fuels you.
Yeah. So with that said, thank you for rocking with us. Thank you for hanging with us. And if you made it this far, you're a trooper.
Yeah.
To be honest, you're a trooper. Thank you for hanging out to the very end of this podcast. So we gon' not keep you much longer. So until next time, keep creating, keep questioning, and keep embracing your inner muse. We'll see you next time. Bye.
The Melanin Muses Podcast is produced by Nikki Borgen in partnership with Benjamin Collins and Scope Productions. This episode was edited by Benjamin Collins. You can find a video version of this podcast at youtube.com/Scope Productions. Feel free to reach out to us at Melanin Muses Podcast on Instagram and YouTube, or email us at melaninmusespodcast@gmail.com.